The 6 archetypes have always been with us. I am a professor of literature, and literature is my great passion. And looking through all of the great works of Western literature for the last 3,000 years, one can discern pretty easily that there are 6 distinct stages that every major character is asked to go through on his or her journey through life. The 6 archetypes that I identify are very specific. They are the innocent, the orphan, the pilgrim, and then the warrior-lover, that's together, hyphenated, and then the monarch, and finally the magician. And as we go through life, we're invited on this developmental path. We don't have to go on it, but if we do, if we follow in the footsteps of the great figures of myth and story and legend, this is the trajectory we can expect to encounter. The innocent is the new, trusting person, and to some extent we can visualize this person as the baby. And you think, well, the baby's not terribly impressive. But wait. I mean, a baby has 2 really powerful things in its command, and that is it really knows how to love, and it really knows how to trust. And if we don't retain that knowledge throughout our lives, we're not going to have a decent adult relationship with anybody. So the baby looks, as I say, innocent and maybe even fragile, and that's why it's a stage that has to be grown through, because if you stay in that stage, you're very vulnerable. And that's not a good place to be. Forgiving is good, but forgiving too easily and too often can hurt. The first time we fall in love, we're likely to give too much too soon, too willingly, and unless we're very lucky, it usually doesn't work out the very first time. And then we feel hurt, and that's the point at which we can lose sight of our idealistic side. And then we are likely to settle for someone who is good enough or is going to treat me relatively well, rather than the person that one really feels a strong, powerful attraction towards. And that's the orphan archetype. I like to think in terms of the medieval pilgrims or even the pilgrim fathers who first came to this country. They knew what they wanted, but they couldn't get it where they were. So they said, I know there's more for me. And they set out on a search. And that's what many people do after they've been orphans for a while, and they say, gosh, I'm just meeting the same people and the same kinds of people. There's got to be someone who's really going to spark my interest, but they don't know where to go for that person. And such a person is restless, sometimes difficult to deal with, sometimes rejecting, because they've got much more practice at saying this is not right, rather than recognizing something that might be right. So the pilgrim is on a search to find the other, but also to find him or herself, because you can't really identify the person you need to be with, I think, unless you've looked inside yourself first. I use the term warrior-lover because I think these 2 attributes exist side by side. This is the peaceful fighter, but this is the person who is prepared to fight for what he or she loves, and nothing is worth loving if it's not worth fighting for. So here is the person who says, this is where I'm going to go with the people and the causes that I love in my life. I am going to fight for them, and I am going to make sure that my whole heart is in this. In some ways that's symbolized by, or was symbolized once upon a time by the wedding ceremony, where one literally abjures all others, according to the Book of Common Prayer, and chooses this one person. But also it's the most productive. If you think about it in symbolic terms, going through museums and so on, one often sees pictures of people like St. Michael killing the dragon, or George killing the dragon, and you think, well, gosh, That's a weird thing to describe, but actually it shows us the fusion of the militant warrior aspect fighting to kill the dragon and then rescue the maiden, usually, or rescue mankind. Think in terms of a real monarch, which is usually a king and queen together. So it's like the warrior lover, except one step further. And these are the people who, perhaps like mum and dad, look after the family because they love the family. They run the family, they love each other. A king and queen run the kingdom, not just to make themselves rich, but to make sure the kingdom works as well as it possibly can, so they can hand it on, therefore, to their children. This is the manager. This is the person who steps back and allows the kingdom to be run more or less under its own energy, but steps in from time to time to say, we're not doing that. We need to punish this person or promote that person. And this is a different way of doing things. Most people know how to go out and fight for their own best interests. Not many people can step back from that ego space and say, how can we all work together for the best interests of everyone, not just me, not just my family, but my whole community, my whole area, or even the whole country. And that's why a monarch is a really strong gathering force. Obama, when he was going through his election campaign, showed signs definitely of being a monarch, because one of his rallying cries was, "Together we can." And that's what the monarch says. The monarch can't do everything him or herself. The monarch has to enlist help and trust and get people working in every sense of the word. If we think of the magician, we can imagine many things. We can imagine, for instance, someone who can change the energy of a situation by being older and wiser and knowing a few things. And so in love, this might be the older advisor. And the older advisor might just be somebody who has had a few lumps and bumps along the way, and instead of telling people what to do, knows how to get them to think and change their energy about who they are. Now that sounds a little abstract. So imagine grandma. Grandma loves her little grandchildren, but grandma might be a little older and slower and frailer than she would wish. So grandma doesn't chase around after the children as a younger mother might do. What she knows how to do is to say, Freddie or Johnny or whatever, come here, just have a little word here. And she can be the big peacemaker, or if it's grandpa, he can be the powerful peacemaking force that helps people to bring out the best and most loving parts of themselves. These are people who are not powerful because they are physically strong, but because they have the wisdom of love and knowing and looking out for others. There is more reflection we can, all of us, do about love and how to love the people around us, as sexually, as well as in terms of loving our neighbors and even loving our enemies, which is a very difficult thing to do. And so that's, I think, the guiding force behind this book and perhaps all of Western literature that deals with this type of issue.